Sociopath, psychopath. You've probably heard these words thrown around, right? We use them to describe a certain kind of person. But what really truly separates them? Well, to start figuring this out, I want you to ask yourself a few brutally honest questions. First, and be honest with yourself here. Do you genuinely believe that you're just better, smarter, or more important than most of the people around you? Okay, next question. Are you a compulsive liar? I mean, is twisting the truth or just making things up entirely your default setting when it helps you get ahead? And last one. When you've set your sights on something, are there any lines you absolutely refuse to cross to get it? If you found yourself nodding along to these, you're tapping into the very traits that define both sociopaths and psychopaths. So why do we get these two terms so mixed up all the time? Well, the confusion starts because from a clinical standpoint, they actually come from the same family tree. And that starting point is called antisocial personality disorder, or APD for short. Think of it as the big umbrella diagnosis for people who consistently show this pattern of being incredibly conceited, deceitful, and manipulative. They both live under this umbrella, but as you're about to see, how they live, how these traits actually play out in the real world, couldn't be more different. All right, let's get into our first major difference, their behavior, just how they act day to day. This is where you can really start to see the two paths diverge. Here's the simplest way to frame it. The sociopath is hot, impulsive chaos. The psychopath is cold, controlled, and calculating. They're two completely different operating systems. The classic sociopath tends to live this messy, chaotic life on the fringes. They can't hold down a steady job, maybe they move around a lot, because they're driven by impulse and short-term gain. Think of the con man Charles Ponzi. His entire life was just a whirlwind of schemes, lies, and get-rich-quick plots, all fired by that immediate, reckless need for what he wanted right now. But the psychopath? Oh, that's a whole different story. They're the predator that you'd never see coming. They are masters of self-control. They often have great careers, they're well-educated, and they blend right in. In fact, they're often drawn to positions of power, CEOs, surgeons, top lawyers, jobs that give them control. They build this perfect mask. Just look at John Wayne Gacy, a successful contractor, a friendly guy who dressed up as a clown for kids' parties, a pillar of the community, all while secretly being one of history's most monstrous serial killers. Okay, so that leads us to maybe the most chilling difference of all. Their ability, or really, their complete inability to feel and connect with other human beings. And the emotional gap between them is profound. A sociopath's wiring for empathy is definitely damaged, but it's not totally gone. They can form some attachments. A psychopath, on the other hand, is an emotional black hole. There's just nothing there. So, a sociopath's empathy, when it does show up, is really weak and selective. They might form a real bond with a partner or a parent or close friend while being totally ruthless to everyone else. Get this, the Green River Killer, Gary Ridgway, he murdered at least 49 women just horribly, yet his wife said their relationship was loving and happy. He claimed to hate his victims but love his wife. It's this bizarre, compartmentalized ability to feel. Now, compare that to the mind of a psychopath. This quote from psychiatrist Hervey Cleckley's famous book, The Mask of Sanity, just says it all. For a psychopath, things like goodness, evil, love, horror, and humor have no actual meaning, no power to move him. The whole range of human emotion we feel, to them, it's just a list of words in a dictionary they've memorized. So how on earth do they operate in society? Well, they become incredible actors. They spend their lives watching us, studying how we react, and then they mimic those emotions to manipulate people. The cult leader Jim Jones was a master of this. He told his followers he'd be anything they needed, a father, a friend, their savior. But it was all just an act, a performance designed for absolute power and control. So this all brings up a huge question, right? Are people born like this, or does something happen to make them this way? Well, it turns out their origins seem to be very different. And really, it boils down to that classic debate, nature versus nurture. Sociopathy is largely thought to be a product of the environment. It's nurture, often caused by severe childhood trauma or abuse. Psychopathy, on the other hand, is believed to be nature, something you're born with. And we can actually see this. Modern neuroscience shows what looks like a real physiological defect. When scientists scan the brains of psychopaths, they find that key areas are underdeveloped. The parts responsible for things like impulse control and processing emotions just don't light up the way they should. The brain activity in the zones for empathy and morality is incredibly low. It suggests the fundamental wiring for a conscience just isn't there to begin with. Okay, so after laying out all these differences, what does this actually look like in the world around us? How common are they? The numbers, they might just surprise you. Let's start with sociopaths. The best estimates we have right now suggest they make up about 4% of the population. Think about that. That's 1 out of every 25 people. And for psychopaths, the number is a bit smaller, but it's no less staggering. About 1% of the population. That's 1 in every 100 people. Now, I know, these might sound like small percentages, but when you really stop and think about it, it hits you. These aren't just abstract stats. They translate to millions of people living and working right alongside us, from the impulsive liar down the street to the cold, calculating person in the corner office. And that really brings us to one last, pretty sobering thought. Given those numbers, and now that you know what to look for, the chances are not just possible, but actually probable that you've crossed paths with one. Maybe you even know one right now. Kind of makes you think, doesn't it?